And my research is concerned with the sustainable production and consumption of technology metals. So don't worry if you're not sure what I mean by sustainable and production and consumption. I'll go into that in a bit more detail later. So technology metals can be understood as those metals that are important to technological applications. So they'll be present in things like batteries, magnets, and electronics. And they're also considered to have high economic vulnerability and high global supply chain risk. Okay, so the context of my research is that consumers often cannot access clear information about the environmental and social impact of manufactured goods. So this prevents them from factoring this into purchasing decisions. My hypothesis is that regulation and or governance strategies can help address this information deficit by requiring a degree of transparency from producers. Also, digital technology like blockchain can help overcome some of the difficulties associated with being more transparent. So the chain of reasoning goes like this. Once clear information is accessible to consumers, the foundations are laid for measures like incentive strategies that encourage sustainable purchasing choices. The true value of sustainability can then be incorporated in the market. And this creates an organic market incentive for producers to improve product sustainability. And to explore this, I have chosen rare earth magnets as a case study. So to give some background, my research comes under the NICE interdisciplinary project that establishes the Circular Economy Centre for Technology Metals, MET4Tech for short. So this is seeking to maximise opportunities for the UK provision of these metals. Its goal is to develop a roadmap towards a circular economy, and I'll explain what I mean by that circular economy in a minute. So technology metals are crucial to the technology needed in the green transition. So that's photovoltaics, wind turbines, hydrogen fuel cell technology, and lithium-ion batteries. And they include lithium, rare earth elements, cobalt and platinum group metals, but also extend to metals such as tin and tungsten. The UK is almost completely import reliant on these metals, and demand is increasing as the world moves towards net zero carbon. So this increases supply chain and market risk, and the risk that critical limits will be reached. So taking rare earths as an example, the UK currently mines no rare earth deposits, and China has significant market dominance. There's also significant environmental damage associated with mining of these metals. For example, there are real hazards in the chemical processing of rare earth ores, and these have been linked to the poisoning and disease of residents, water pollution and farmland devastation. And some ores have high concentration of radioactive material. Also, as with ore mining, the extraction of rare earth oxides requires a considerable amount of energy, which is usually carbon-intensive power. And there are also human rights concerns associated with rare earth mining. For example, some mines in Myanmar are reported to be under junta military control. And China has also faced persistent issues with smuggling and illegal mining activity, which is characteristically damaging to the environment and human rights. Supply constraints have historically led to considerable reliance on illegal supply. So all this threatens climate alleviation and sustainable development goals. And a circular economy for these metals could mitigate this risk. So circular economy system seeks to repair, reuse, remanufacture, and ultimately recycle. And this is in order to keep material in production in a continuous cycle. So ideally, waste is removed from the supply chain completely, but at least as far as possible. So if we contrast this to the current system for these metals, so we extract the raw materials from the earth, we make, we sell, we use, and ultimately we dispose. A circular economy can ease pressure on primary resources and mitigate supply constraints. And it also supports sustainability because it can have benefits for business, people, and the environment. As well as mitigating supply chain and market risks, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation cites some of the benefits of the circular economy. And these include increased employment and more effective capture of value. And for example, a focus on repair and manufacture would increase the need for skilled labour. In 2015, the United Nations General Assembly set up 17 goals: social, economic and environmental. It's hoped that these will move the world to a more sustainable future. And the resolution containing these goals, known as Agenda 30, has universal ratification. This means that every member state of the United Nations has committed to them. So a circular economy is very relevant to Goal 12, which relates to responsible consumption and production. This includes the sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources. It also includes the environmentally sound management of chemicals and all waste throughout material life cycles. Waste should be reduced through prevention, reduction, reuse and recycling. Sustainable production and consumption is not straightforward, however. Producers do not always know how to produce in a sustainable way. Poor supply chain traceability adds to this difficulty. And consumers often do not know what to buy to be sustainable. And poor supply chain transparency makes this difficult. Consumers are at a greater disadvantage, however, when it comes to assessing environmental and social impact of goods and services, because the information is rarely made available to them. This is particularly relevant to complex globalized supply chains. And this raises some interesting questions. For example, to what extent do or should consumers bear responsibility for the environmental and social impact of purchasing choices? It's difficult to have accountability or bear responsibility if the information needed to make an informed decision is not made available. Another thing is, should consumers have the right to be given clear information about the environmental and social impact of goods and services? And this would be so that they can make purchasing choices that align with their values. So when assessing the value of goods, neoclassical economics would regard the disparity of information between sellers and buyers to be a form of market failure, because it creates a situation where the free market fails to efficiently allocate resources. So if it is accepted that the sustainability of a product has a value, and this is given that the goal is to produce and consume sustainably, the information asymmetry about the environmental and social impact of a product can be considered a market failure. Now, there's currently no legal requirement to make sustainability disclosure at the point of sale of goods and services. Many companies voluntarily use eco-labels and certification. However, there are many different approaches and different criteria. And this makes informed assessment and comparison between products difficult. So my research rests on some normative assumptions. For example, the sustainable production and consumption is actually desirable. And also the interventions in the free market can be justified for the common good. I've decided to focus on the rare earth magnet market. So the challenges associated with the supply chains of different technology metals are quite similar. And rare earth magnets are such an important component in the green transition. For example, they are currently crucial for electric vehicles and offshore wind turbine generators. But it has not had the attention paid to it as of other products that are important, such as lithium-ion batteries. My research will explore the impact of regulatory measures on this market. It will also explore the barriers and drivers of self-governance and uptake of digital enabling technology. And interviews will be undertaken with a range of professionals involved in the industry, including for regulatory agencies and stakeholder companies. And this will produce a data set that will assist in exploring my hypothesis. So I'm currently finalising possible participants, and I hope to start interviews within the next month. In terms of impact, the foundations for regulatory measures towards sustainability reporting and the disclosure for the sale of goods and services have already been laid. And arguably, it is now only a matter of time. This is given the rising global demand for sustainability disclosure. Governments, customers and investors are increasingly seeking environmentally friendly products and processes. And there can be significant reputational costs for failing to meet the demand for sufficient disclosure about a product's composition, origin and production conditions. And in the UK, mandatory sustainability labelling and disclosure is already in the pipeline for investment products. And in addition to this, the government has proposed to introduce the introduction of product labelling to show durability, repairability and recyclability of products along with emission intensity. And in its industrialised decarbonisation strategy in 2021, the government committed to developing proposals that help buyers recognise low emissions and make green choices. And included in this was a commitment to develop proposals to improve data transparency and product labelling. So research in this area is useful and timely. Also, as there has been no prior academic research on this topic, it will add to value to very limited scholarship. And this is particularly important considering the importance of technology metals in the green transition and the risk of resource constraints. And data management processes such as blockchain are increasingly being used in industry to secure traceability and transparency within the supply chain. But there's been little academic attention paid to the use of this in supply chain of critical materials, or its potential to support sustainability disclosure obligations at the point of sale of goods and services.